ever feel like you're drowning in data, trying to keep up with, well, everything going on, especially with like big companies and how they impact the environment?
It can be overwhelming, yeah.
So today we're going to like really dive deep into Google's 2024 environmental report.
Okay.
And I think what's so fascinating about this report is that it's not just about like Google reducing their own impact, but they're really leaning into AI as a tool to tackle these bigger climate challenges.
Yeah, it's a kind of two-pronged approach we see them doing. They're trying to shrink their own footprint, but also building out these AI tools that can have an impact way beyond Google itself.
Right. It's almost like they're trying to build the tools to offset the digital world's impact, which, like, let's be real, that's huge. I mean, just to start, they hit 100% renewable energy for the 7th year in a row.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. But then you read on and see their total energy use still jumped by 17% last year alone.
Yeah, that's the catch-22, right? Like reaching 100% renewable means they've ditched fossil fuels, which is huge, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But the more we rely on digital, the bigger those data centers get and the more energy they demand.
It's like trying to run on a treadmill.
Oh,
You can get faster and faster, but you're still on the treadmill.
exactly. And it's only going to get faster from here as AI plays a bigger role.
And it's not even just the energy use, right? I mean, the report says their data centers used over 6 billion with a B gallons of water in 2023.
Wow.
Enough to keep 41 golf courses green all year round. Kind of makes you think twice about those late-night TikTok scrolls.
It's easy to forget there's a very real cost to all that digital stuff we use. Our phones, our cloud gaming, streaming, whatever it is. Those data centers need a ridiculous amount of water to stay cool. And water is already a scarce resource in so many places.
Yeah, it's like a hidden environmental cost of our digital lives that we don't always see.
Exactly. And it raises questions about, where are these data centers being built? What impact are they having on local water supplies, especially as data use keeps going up?
Right? And to Google's credit, they are trying to address this. I mean, they're aiming for zero waste to landfill at their data centers.
Which is a massive goal, let's be honest.
Absolutely. And they're only at 29% right now. But even hitting that, they had to change how they were measuring waste to better align with these circular economy principles.
Yeah, that's actually a really important point, that shift in how they're measuring things. It shows just how tricky it is to really track progress in a circular economy. It's not just about how much trash goes to the landfill.
So it's way more complicated than just, separating your plastic from your cardboard.
Way more complicated. It's about rethinking the entire life of their data centers. From design to construction to how they operate and even how they're taken apart at the end, all to minimize waste and reuse as much as possible.
Wow, so it's a whole different way of thinking about resources.
Totally. And Google's pushing for the circularity beyond just waste, too. Like they're using more recycled materials, trying to make their products last longer, even reclaiming materials when they take down old buildings.
Okay, so that's encouraging.
It is, but as we said before, the sheer scale of what they do makes this a monumental task. It'll be interesting to see how they handle these issues as Google keeps growing.
And speaking of tackling big challenges, their work with AI is where things get really interesting. Imagine using artificial intelligence not to power Google Maps, but to combat climate change itself.
And that's what we're going to explore next, how Google is leveraging AI's potential to create positive change far beyond their own operations.
So we've talked about what Google's doing internally, but their work with AI to solve bigger climate issues really jumped out at me in this report.
Yeah, it feels almost futuristic in a way.
It does. Like, it's one thing to use AI for Google Maps, but using it to combat climate change, it's a whole different ballgame.
It is, but it's a perfect example of how we can use technology, to tackle these huge global problems that honestly sometimes seem impossible.
Totally. And one of the examples that stuck with me was green light. Using AI to optimize traffic lights sounds so simple when you say it like that.
It does sound simple, right? But that's the beauty of it. Greenlight can analyze all these traffic patterns in real time and then adjust how long lights stay green or red to make everything flow smoother.
So less stop and go, less idling, less emissions overall.
Exactly. Early studies are showing it could cut emissions at intersections by like 10%, which when you think about how many traffic lights are in a city, that's a lot.
That's huge. And it makes you think, like, what other simple solutions are out there that we just haven't thought of yet? And speaking of not so obvious, they're even tackling airplane contrails, those white streaks you see in the sky.
Oh, yeah.
I always thought they were kind of pretty, but apparently they're a big deal for climate change.
Yeah, more than you'd think. Those contrails are basically clouds of water vapor that trap heat in the atmosphere. And because they're so high up, that warming effect gets amplified.
Huh. I never knew that. So how do you even begin to tackle something like that?
Well, it's complicated. Google's using AI to design flight paths that create as few contrails as possible. But to do that, they have to factor in weather patterns, air traffic control, airline routes. It's a whole thing.
The report mentioned a 54% reduction in contrails during a trial run.
Yeah, it's impressive, right? But to get those kinds of results on a larger scale, it takes a lot of players working together.
Right, it's not just Google flipping a switch.
Exactly. Airlines, regulators, tech companies. They all need to be on board, which is why Google partnering with others is so crucial.
It's like they're opening up a whole new way to solve problems. And it's not even just about reducing emissions, they're also using AI to help us deal with the effects of climate change that are already happening, like predicting extreme weather events.
Absolutely. They're developing these AI models that can analyze huge amounts of data. You're talking weather patterns, historical records, even satellite imagery to predict things like heat waves, floods, and wildfires, and they're getting more accurate all the time.
Which is so important because the more accurate those predictions are, the more time people have to prepare,
Yeah.
and authorities can get resources to the right places beforehand.
Exactly. It's like having a super-powered early warning system. And in
Right.
some cases, those AI predictions could literally save lives. And it's not just about reacting to disasters either. It's about designing more resilient cities and infrastructure.
Right, so we can better handle whatever comes our way.
Yep.
And they're applying AI to more localized problems, too. Like
Right.
the report talked about mapping urban tree canopy coverage, which, to be honest, sounded kind of random to me.
I can see why you'd think that, but it's actually really smart. See, trees are amazing at reducing urban heat islands. You know, those areas in cities that get way hotter than the surrounding areas because of all the concrete and lack of shade.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So by mapping where all the trees are, and more importantly, where they aren't, they can figure out the best places to plant new trees to combat that urban heat effect.
So they're basically using AI to make our cities greener and cooler.
Exactly. And that's not all. They're also experimenting with AI to optimize the design of cool roofs. These are roofs designed to reflect sunlight and absorb less heat.
Wow, so many different applications. Okay, so we've seen the good side of AI for sustainability, optimizing traffic lights, predicting wildfires. It's pretty mind-blowing. But I'm guessing there's got to be a flip side to all this. Like, it can't all be positive, right?
You're right. As with any powerful technology, there are always trade-offs. And that's what we need to dig into next, the potential downsides of using AI for sustainability and how Google's trying to address those challenges.
Like that saying, right, you got to spend money to make money. We've seen how powerful AI can be for, like, tackling these environmental problems. But it takes resources to make that happen.
Totally. And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's like
Right.
we're trying to put out a fire with a hose that's also kind of fueling the fire at the same time.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
Right. AI needs a ton of computing power, and that means energy use. And the more we use AI, the more energy it's going to demand.
Which brings us back to that 17% jump in Google's energy use we talked about.
Hmm.
Even if they're using all renewable sources, if the overall demand keeps growing, are they really making a difference?
It's like trying to fill a bathtub with the drain half open.
I like that analogy.
And there's another piece to this, too. It's not just about the energy AI uses while it's running. It's also about what they call embodied carbon.
Okay, so what's that?
So basically, it's the carbon footprint of the entire life of all that hardware needed for AI, like mining the materials, manufacturing the servers, shipping them all over the place. All of that has emissions tied to it.
So it's like even before you plug in the AI, there's already an environmental cost.
Exactly. It's about looking at the whole picture, not just the energy use once the AI is up and running, but the impact of creating all that tech in the first place.
Okay, so it's getting clearer why Google's emphasizing that three-part strategy for responsible AI.
Yeah, and it's good that they're acknowledging this isn't a simple fix. It's about model optimization, efficient infrastructure, and constantly looking for ways to reduce emissions.
So let's break those down. With model optimization, they're basically trying to make the AI itself use less energy.
Exactly. It's like making the code more elegant, finding those shortcuts that achieve the same results with less computing power.
Like streamlining the whole process from the inside out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And with infrastructure, it's about making their data centers themselves more efficient, like optimizing their cooling systems, which use a ton of energy. And of course, continuing that push for 100% renewable energy to power it all.
So it's about building a greener foundation for AI to run on.
You got it. But even with all of that, the demand for AI is only going to go up, which means its impact is going to keep growing too.
So that's where that third part comes in, right? The continuous emissions reductions.
Exactly. It's about breaking the link between their growth and their environmental impact. They want to keep growing, obviously, but they're aiming for net zero emissions even as AI becomes a bigger part of everything they do.
Okay, so it's ambitious, for sure. But this whole deep dive has been pretty eye-opening. It's made me think about Google's role, but also just the choices we all make in this digital world.
Totally. It's easy to forget that all this amazing tech we use has real-world impacts. And it's on all of us to think about that, demand transparency, and support companies that are really trying to make a difference.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right.
If you're listening and want to learn more about Google's sustainability efforts and this whole AI angle, we'll link to their full environmental report in the show notes. It's a fascinating read. And until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and as always, keep diving deeper.